afternoon, whenever you're listening to this, welcome to the internet's most sophisticated wrestling podcast, discussing the weekly aspects of it all, right here on
The Bald Monkeys Wrestling Podcast.
Happy Easter all, and welcome to the Bald Monkeys Wrestling Podcast. You know, one thing that we do sometimes, and I don't do it every single episode, but I always feel every couple episodes I probably should do it, especially because our listener count maybe isn't as high as it could be, is to introduce ourselves. So there's three of us here tonight. We have a fourth coming in a little while. I am Big Baby Jimmy. Gentlemen, would you like to introduce yourselves?
I am known as the one as Christopher.
Christopher!
Hello.
and I am the captain. Not Morgan, but Chuckles.
The captain of Chuckles. And we have Steven the Boss Hill coming on later. He'll pop in at some point and spread his bad opinions all over the place. But
Slam it.
just he's not here. Let's just slam him while he's not here. So the last time that we came to you guys here, we had just talked about WrestleMania, and we talked about WrestleMania the whole time, and how I think the general consensus from the Bald Monkeys Wrestling Podcast was that although as a wrestling show, it would have been a reasonable wrestling show with reasonable matches, naming it WrestleMania and providing it to us as WrestleMania, it didn't quite hit the mark with a couple exceptions. So now we move on to that so important week after WrestleMania for WWE, and what have they done to try to improve their product, change their product in little ways, and obviously it goes without saying that it's going to be a little bit difficult, given the nature of America right now, to really get things shaken up. But that being said, there were some new wrestlers showing up, like on SmackDown at least, and definitely some new stuff that happened on WrestleMania and then transferred over to the Raw, basically just repeats. And you know, WWE, they love to do that, right, boys? Hey, we don't know what to write, so we made some storylines in WrestleMania. We'll just repeat that. We'll just have matches all over again, because that's what everybody wants to see. You just saw WrestleMania matches, and you want to see them one more time.
I think they missed an opportunity to be really clever with some of their tapings. Like, I understand that they did a couple of rematches this week, WrestleMania rematches, but it would have been interesting if they taped two different finishes or just two different matches entirely and didn't tell anybody what they were going to air when. So you didn't know what aired what night. It could have just messed with everybody a little bit. And I took issue with, and I mentioned this last time we spoke, I took issue with them opening up the week of wrestling with Asuka over Morgan. And then I thought that was going to be the worst thing. No, I got stuck watching 6 different matches in the next hour that were all the same people, where they do the Street Profits over Garza and Theory, and then they get DQ'd. So then we get Belair versus Vega, and then ends up with no contest. And then we get Street Profits with Belair over Garza, Theory, and Vega. It's like, oh my, like how many different ways can we have the same 6 people out there? It was a bit nauseating.
Christopher, I believe you said that wrong, by the way. It's Mylanta, not oh my. Oh my Lanta.
Oh my Lanta. This is true. My Lanta.
Were you actually thinking that WWE writers were actually going to do something different this time? I think they're all furloughed, and someone's just like doing something weird. people like this one. We'll do it again for a whole hour.
What's the typical thing though for them, right? Like, hey, we had a successful WrestleMania, so now all the writers are going to take a break because of all the great storylines that we gave to you at WrestleMania, all the compelling stories and matches that you guys were so entertained by. We deserve a break because we worked so hard. You kidding me?
Well, the cherry on the top that was Raw was McIntyre over the Big Show, where Big Show apparently just shows up after the WrestleMania match and drags a ref out there. Like, I don't understand that at all. Like, there was zero reason to do that after the Brock Lesnar thing. Somebody explained it that they wanted to show that McIntyre took out the two big monsters of, the WWE. I don't see Big Show as a monster at all. Like, I watch his show on Netflix now, so he's not a monster at all. the Big Show is ridiculous. My kids have already watched it twice.
He had a harder time with Big Show than he did with Brock Lesnar.
Well, it was an actual match, at least.
It was a much better match.
He picked up and slammed the Big Show. It was impressive, right? It was good to see McIntyre do that, but it wasn't necessary. And it definitely wasn't necessary to do it night after night, 2 nights in a row. Again, they took all this content and shoved it into 3 days when they probably could have dragged it out for 3 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, really, that's all they were doing was hurting themselves, because when they put themselves in a position where day to day we're going to try to do live shows, but we're not very, very sure whether we're going to be able to do it or not. You put yourself in a position where you go, well, I mean, we could have just not done WrestleMania and postponed it and then had all this content, and then we wouldn't be in this pickle. We wouldn't have to worry about this. It would buy us another month. And then once we have that other month, maybe things lax up and we have somewhere where we can tape.
There was one interesting thing they rolled out there on Monday, and it kind of seemed like something that we were frustrated with in the past, but I said it myself. I said we need to trust in the process, see what happens. Ricochet and Alexander end up tagging to take on Lorcan and Birch, and that was an entertaining tag team to watch, which I wouldn't expect any less from those two. That could be an interesting tag team going forward. Two guys that have been really crushed for a while, buried for a while, and now they tag team it up, and now maybe they can kind of fight the man or fight the machine and come back and really be a force in the tag team division.
Yeah, I think it's a no-brainer, pair up, and I think it's at a good point where, even though you could argue that Ricochet definitely has more fan love than Alexander does, I kind of view those guys kind of at the same level, and I don't know that either of them quite have what it takes at this point, especially from WWE's perspective. This is not my perspective, because I think Alexander's great, but I don't think that either of these guys have what they are looking for. And so because of that, why not pair them together and have an entertaining tag team in the process? I think that's, they can be good singles talent, but if you're not going to use them, why not pair them up? It's very different from Kairi Sane Asuka, which we've very many times talked about them being such good singles wrestlers, because they were still so over with the fans that, why would you have split them up? And while I think that Ricochet's over with the fans, but the problem is he's not as over as other over people.
The funny thing I look at with this tag team is these were two guys that both at one point in time over the last, 4-5 months maybe, got what seemed to be huge pushes. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we're just buried. And now they've put those two guys that were on like the same path and followed each other on the same path. Now they've put both of these pushed, then buried guys together. So it'll be interesting to see what they kind of do with them going forward. I mean, if they see them as possibly someone going up against or having them, go for the tag titles, it'll be interesting to see what they do with the Street Profits and that whole Garza thing, what's going to go on there. And it's a very interesting dynamic.
Yeah, it's funny you talk about that push and then that burial, because I remember going to Clash of Champions with Chris in Charlotte, and one of the matches was going to be Alexander versus AJ Styles, but we didn't know when it was going on. Like, they didn't announce like what order, but we saw that match and we were like, well, there's no way that that's going to be an early match. It's going to be middle of the card, and it's probably going to be the best match of the night. And then, nope, pre-show match. Like, what? That match? Those two guys? Two of the best workers on the show at the time? It's incredible that they even put it there. But, at some point tonight, I would like to do a small pivot to that Dark Side of the Ring, the Brawl for All, because I found watching that to be very interesting, of that topic of wrestlers that work really hard and get crowd support and then get nothing from it just because, the writers don't want them to.
Pivot away, my friend. Pivot away.
We
have no script. We just talk about what we want to talk about.
Well, the most I thought that the thing, and since we've talked about the dark side of wrestling, there's been 2 episodes that have come on, and I thought for sure the one I would want to talk about the most would be The Life and Crimes of New Jack, which was plenty crazy, don't get me wrong, and it was a very interesting story. But the interesting thing to me about the Brawl for All episode was these very different dynamics, very important points that were made in that episode about a couple different topics. One is wrestling real, and talking about the realities of wrestling from the standpoint of like, yeah, okay, it's scripted, and all the characters aren't necessarily really who these people are, but they do go out there and they put their bodies on the line, and they kind of emphasize that point home towards the end of that episode, talking about Droz and him getting, paralyzed with the match that he had with D'Lo, and then both saying, it was neither of us's fault. It's just something that happens. So that was one of the very first things that, by the time I got to the end of the episode, I thought was very interesting. Maybe what was more interesting than that was the story of Bart Gunn. And that it made me, while I thought I was going to go into, the Brawl for All, thinking to myself, well, I already know this story. You forget there are people that the WWE systematically buries, and you just forget about them. And Bart Gunn is one of those people. That is a compelling story where they tell them, hey, you're going to go in here and this is going to be the real deal, and let's see if you win. And he beats his tag team partner. And then in the next round, he's put up against the guy that everybody thinks is going to win it. And they don't ask him to pull punches. They don't ask him to not try. And everybody just kind of mocks him and thinks, there's no way you're going to beat this guy. And he crushes him. He injures him really bad. And that was Dr. Death.
Yeah. And Steve Williams ended up, what did he, tear a quad or something like that? Or tear a hamstring?
Yeah, it was his hammy. He tore his hammy. Yeah. And then so that's another thing right there. That's because that's the other one. That's the offshoot. You've got your guy, and then that guy gets injured, and that guy has suddenly looked weak because of the booking. And all of a sudden, that person has no value to the people at the top that are making decisions. Now, in my opinion, I say that's malarkey. You can always reinvent people. You can always bring people back from looking weak and turn them around and make them strong. You just have to put in the effort and put the good writing in. But so then we follow Bart Gunn as he then knocks out the Godfather, and then he knocks out Bradshaw to be crowned, the number one guy. And from quite frankly, I think he does have momentum at that point, and he has deserved the push. And maybe he deserved the push that Dr. Death was going to get. Maybe he deserved to go up against Austin. And now maybe it didn't work from a simple like face heel perspective, but you can write stuff into the story to make that work and give him the push. But instead, he's got heat with the group that's in charge, because he was told to just go out there and try, and he did, and he was successful, and so he gets punished for that. And what is he rewarded with after he wins the whole tournament? They feed him to Butterbean, and you never hear about Bart Gunn ever again.
That was a nasty feeding.
It's awful.
His head legitimately turned the other direction. Like Butterbean says it in the Dark Side too, where he's like, his head turned around, and my son told me I killed him. It looked horrible. I remembered it when I watched it again, and I didn't remember how bad it was.
Oh, well, if you've never seen it before, like you get somebody who's never seen it, let them watch it. You think the person's dead in the ring.
Yeah. Well, most of those knockouts were pretty severe. If you go back and look at a lot of those Brawl for All endings, a lot of them were pretty bad punches. And it was interesting because I honestly didn't know that the whole thing was really built around JBL talking trash. And Russo just wanted to show up JBL, and it essentially worked out where he did. Bart knocked him out. But look what it did to a lot of those guys, and I think JR said it in the documentary. Nobody got over. Nobody. Nobody made anything out of that Brawl for All other than this story, however many years later.
Yeah, well, I would argue though that at the time Bart Gunn did get over, but the writers just buried him immediately afterwards.
They sent him home.
Go ahead, Chris.
I was gonna say they sent him home. Like,
I know.
He was supposed, but let's be honest, because essentially he was supposed to fight Stone Cold. He never got to fight Stone Cold at WrestleMania. He fought Butterbean instead. But Stone Cold fought The Rock in a no DQ match with Mankind as the referee that year for the main event. It's not like we got some throwaway match instead of Bart Gunn versus Stone Cold. So if ultimately the match was going to be, Stone Cold and whoever won the Brawl for All, I think they kind of made the right decision to make it what they made it that year.
Yeah, because that was an amazing WrestleMania match between The Rock and Austin.
There's still ways of doing it though. I'm not saying he needed to go.
He might have got a shot. Yeah, it might have been a different one, right? Yeah. It might have been like not at WrestleMania. He might have got his shot earlier than that. But feeding him to Butterbean was, that was terrible.
Unforgivable as a writer. Like, why are you just going to waste the momentum that the wrestler that you put the ability to create momentum in his hands, and he took it and he went for it. And you sold it to every single person that you asked to be into it as, hey, if you can make it through, this is going to put you on top. You told them that. And instead you bury them.
Yeah, I thought one of the crazy things was, we know that Cornette and Russo don't see eye to eye when it comes to wrestling. And
it's when understatement of the year.
Yeah, I know. When Cornette goes to Russo, like apparently backstage, and he's like, "See what you do with your stupid idea? You just buried the guy that WWE paid like $5 million for, you idiot." Talking about Dr. Death, because they brought him in to really, kind of challenge for, the top championships. And within 2 months, they basically I don't even remember, did he even come back from that and wrestle with them?
I don't remember him ever coming back after that.
Yeah, I mean they just like they brought him into the tournament. Yeah, this is gonna be our guy, and boom, second round done, and then your investment's done.
They
I
said
mean,
within a year he
it's
was out. Within a year he was out of the WWE. And if he tore a hamstring, then the majority of that was him rehabbing.
yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's just it's funny to hear Cornette like just say that in that moment, like you just cost us this $5 million of this damn company. Oh man, but it really was. I wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was, I guess, this episode. But I like you guys said, like Chris said, I mean, it was nice to see the tie-in to Draws and D'Lo and what happened with them after this whole tournament and everything. So, and it is, and I think I said this to Chris via text. I was like, yeah, it's nice to see that there's no, at least on the surface, there's no hard feelings between the two of them where, you could easily see one, Draws being, really pissed off about what happened.
I mean, it's the business they work in, and they take precautions, and these people are professionals, and they really wrestle as safe as they can wrestle, but stuff still happens. People still get
Yeah.
injured.
It just shows you how one little bit of a mishap in a move could just literally end someone's career and could possibly even end someone's life.
Yeah, and they'll by the end of the series, because I believe the very last episode that they'll do is Owen Hart. I'm sure they're gonna go over Owen Hart breaking Stone Cold's neck at some point.
Which they say ultimately ended his career too.
Yeah,
lingering issues.
Yeah. Another, and I think I agree with you, and I think I had said that in the text with everybody. I had thought that the New Jack would be awesome, but I actually think I enjoyed the Brawl for All more than New Jack because, to your point, it was crazy, and New Jack's crazy, and he's a maniac, and he's crazy. But that's basically what we learned. We learned what we already knew.
yeah.
New Jack is that person. He's exactly who he was that entire time.
Psycho.
Yeah, the story of mass transit, that was fun to kind of go through. I mean, I knew the story vaguely, but I didn't know all the ins and outs of it. So that was really interesting to learn about the 17-year-old kid that he basically cut open with like an ice pick. That New Jack's nuts. Like he should not be a wrestler. I look forward to more documentaries like the Brawl for All. The New Jack one was a fun one to layer in there, but I think I'm more interested in things that show the underlying things that are going on in wrestling, like Russo having an issue with JBL, like two guys who later on had a mishap and someone got injured, but they don't have hard feelings. Those things to me are more interesting than just watching New Jack basically try to kill people.
Yeah, pretty much. I thought, the craziest part of that episode to me was the very, very end of it, when they were just like, if they made a movie about you, how would you want it to end? He's like, me as an old person in a wheelchair, sniffing coke. It's like, what? What the hell?
Every story he told was like, I was in the back sniffing coke.
Yeah.
Well, I was in the back sniffing a lot of coke. Every single story he started with that. That was the beginning of every story.
To be fair, The Godfather, every single time they talk to The Godfather and the Brawl for All, he's like, well, I was smoking weed, but I mean, that didn't change anything because I was always smoking weed.
I was going to go back to you saying like these guys aren't, necessarily exactly, who the personas they're acting to be. The Godfather is exactly who he tried to be that entire, other than Papa Shango, like the Godfather was always himself. Like that was just the guy that he was, like a bouncer from a strip club or a pimp. Like he's just exactly that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did like the story about him going behind the bar and slapping any pimps. If any pimps are here, you're going to get knocked off your chair. And then he talks about going behind the bar and just smacking them with one shot. I would just love, and WWE did this a little bit where they did the animated story, like story time or whatever it was, and they kind of told like stories from the road, or like wrestlers just telling stories of what happened. I wish they would do more of that, because that is the most entertaining thing in the world, is to hear the everyday like stories that are coming up while these guys are out there wrestling for a living, because there's some of the craziest stuff happens out there, getting pulled over by cops. Or I think it was one of those story times was like, I want to say it was Bubba Ray in a car with Teddy Long or something like that. Like, just ridiculousness, them driving in a car and they're playing tricks on Teddy Long. Like, those things are entertaining, and I want to see more of that. And I wish WWE would produce more of that, and pull back the curtain a little bit, and let us see what these guys are doing to just kind of make the time go by.
Well, you
Make
have to
6-hour drives.
It makes them seem more human when you do that too.
Well, I think they can't deny that while the first season of the Dark Side of the Ring, I don't know that it got very much press. The second season has obviously gotten a lot of press, and because of that, you have to imagine somebody in WWE is going, maybe instead of letting other people tell these stories that are the ones that, especially that are focused around the WWE talent, maybe we should tell those stories. Like, why hasn't WWE made a serious documentary about the life of Eddie Guerrero? Like a really good one, like an HBO style one, like they did with Andre the Giant. You don't think people would love that?
They try to stay away from Benoit.
Whatever. At some point, they need to get over it.
Yeah, there's no reason why they're not, other than just it's that weird area. But I wouldn't be surprised if by season 3 or season 4 of if you start finding out that maybe WWE has been supporting them somehow, help them get off the ground, or has some kind of hands in what's going on and getting something out of it. Because some of the footage and stuff they've been using, they had to get licensing for and stuff.
Sure.
So I feel like they have to have their hands in it somewhere. We just probably don't see it.
See, but I think they don't want to touch some of these things because they are controversial. And I think WWE nowadays wants to be as PG goody two shoes as they can be. And a lot of the things that I think the wrestling community wants to hear about are exactly what Chris said, like those underlying things, those the backstabbing that happens, whether it be on the writer side or wrestler sides or management sides. And I don't think WWE wants to pull the curtain away that much. Like, yeah, they'll give Dark Side of the Ring the rights to use the videos for various things because, hey, they're getting paid money for it. Whatever, that's fine. You guys want to do all this? Yeah, here, give us our money and we'll do this. But I don't think they, as a WWE, want to get into that kind of stuff too much because it's for them right now. I feel it's too much of a fine line.
Yeah, but it's like, and I agree, and I like your idea, Chris. Like you say, what everybody like us wants to see, and it made me think. The lives and time of on the road. Some of the stories you've heard, like about how Shawn Michaels and his partying was, or Macho Man and his partying was, and Razor Ramon and his partying was, like just the stories you have heard. What's out there that you haven't? To get these people together and let them talk and communicate about it, just that does make good entertainment. And you're right, they want to stay away from it, but I don't see why they can't be part of it without taking all the credit for it. And I think that's their biggest issue is WWE likes to plaster their name over everything and get as much credit for it all when they don't have to.
Yeah, good point. Good conversation. Good conversation.
What would be interesting? I would love, and this is you guys got me kind of thinking now. Like, imagine if WWE, all the controversy around John Cena burying guys, right?
Mhm.
Imagine if WWE really told us the real story about what happened to some of these guys that supposedly Cena, quote unquote, buried. Imagine
Triple H.
Imagine, fine, yeah, like anybody like that, anybody where it's like the perception is this happened, But what you don't know is what's happening backstage. You only know one side of the story usually, right? Or maybe you know two sides of the story, and somewhere in the middle is the truth. Who was the? I can't remember this guy's name. He's another bigger wrestler. He was a guest star on Glow. What was the wrestler's name? He is notorious for one of the guys that Cena buried, that never even got out of the starting blocks. And I can't remember his name right now. I might have to think about it as we talk, but it's a situation where I think I'd be interested to see if WWE be willing to go that far. If the dark side keeps pushing as much as they're pushing, and if WWE doesn't have any fingers in there, I'd be interested to see if WWE is willing to pull back the curtain, because I think they would gain a lot of viewers and gain a lot of fans if they would just show us the truth. You know, we as fans keep those rumors going and tweeting and on social media talking about stuff. You know, tell us what really happened with CM Punk. Tell us what really happened with John Cena, with Triple H, with Sonny and Shawn Michaels. You know, there's a lot of controversy out there over the years that if you just went ahead and just told us the bar none truth, people would be all over that. People eat it up.
I agree. I would love nothing more than to understand why Triple H had to beat King Booker. Why did he have to beat Booker T?
He didn't. That was stupid.
It made no sense.
Still bothers me.
But I think that would be a really good one, you know. Why would you write Kofi Kingston to get beaten in 1 second by Brock Lesnar? I would love information like that. I don't think that much of that is going. I think some of it will come in the years, but I don't think all of it will come in the years. And I think that in a way that, you know, Bray Wyatt, John Cena, you know, vignette at WrestleMania was one of those kind of one of those things that made everybody feel like there was at least a little bit more justice. Like almost John Cena was almost admitting to the burying of people right as he's getting ready to get buried for Bray Wyatt. So I like that little extra side of Cena that we saw at WrestleMania. But I hate to pivot again, but I want to pivot to some negative news, at least as far as I'm concerned. And that is Bray Wyatt challenging Braun Strowman for the championship.
Ugh.
Oh, all right. Let me set my volume a little bit lower because I'm preparing for the screaming.
I'm not going to scream. I'm not
from
gonna
everyone,
scream.
not just you.
Yeah,
everyone.
I'm not going to scream at all. I just like
it's valid.
The only thing I want to say is like I thought we already viewed this as a problem and took care of it in the right way. You know, when we had him drop the belt, like the only way that I really see this is like I don't get it. Like it doesn't really make any sense, because if you still want Roman to have the belt, he doesn't need to beat the Fiend for it. So I can't imagine that that's the direction they're going in now.
But they've already started advertising for SummerSlam with Strowman versus Roman. So
good. I think that's a better
defeats that
matchup. I mean, I think it's a better matchup. You just have to find a way to have Strowman go heel, and you're just gonna. But wait a second, you're gonna. So wait.
Yeah, that
So
means
you're
he's
gonna
gonna
have-
beat the Fiend. Is he gonna squash him? Like,
Mhm.
what's gonna happen?
Exactly. So we're going in reverse again. We just did the most amazing like fix ever on the Fiend. Like one vignette just saved it all. I don't think he can be saved by losing again. I think if he loses again, it's over.
So maybe not. So there's two things I have in my mind about this. I agree, because I don't love the idea of him going after the belt. We've said this on numerous occasions. But part of me wonders if Bray has a lot of control of what his character's doing. because as much as we dislike a lot of what Bray is doing, it definitely seems to be having these ups and downs, or to his point, this circular thing, these circles that are going on. And if there's a way to take a character and bring them back to their purest state, or bring them back to where they're changed, um, the Miz is back to a heel after facing Bray Wyatt. You basically bring Daniel Bryan back to his indie wrestler days after he faces Bray Wyatt. Is there a way to bring Braun Strowman back into the family after he faces Bray Wyatt? And does Bray necessarily have to win, or does he just have to turn Braun? Does he just have to say he brought him in, he could take him out? So he brought him in as the black sheep. He can take him out as this monster among men, or locomotive, or whatever the hell his new t-shirt is, and then bring him back to that heel character that they need to go up against Reigns. But he doesn't need to take the belt. It's very important. You can go in and have the match. You could essentially lose because of DQ or something, or just disappear. This is the point they missed initially when he was fighting against Rollins. He never had to pin Rollins. He should have never even attempted to pin Rollins. He should just beat the crap out of him and disappeared, and that was it. And again, Rollins is another one that Bray turned Seth Rollins back into a heel, which is one of his purest characters, best characters. So I think there's an opportunity there. I don't trust WWE to do it, but I think that would be a good way to fix this.
Yeah, like make Strowman the monster again, and have it almost like the whole Cena angle where Cena didn't hit him with a chair, but have him do that. Have him be that Mr. Rogers character, laughing at him, telling him just, hit it, be the monster, trying to like bring out his inner being. And then when Strowman hits him, he sits up and laugh, and the lights go off, and then he disappears.
That's it.
And then it's the Fiend again in a few weeks. Like, that's over with. Strowman's a monster again. Strowman starts destroying everything again like he was.
So I think with them having no live crowds, this actually gives WWE so much creative freedom to do exactly some of the things that they did at WrestleMania. And I said it, I don't know if I said it last week. I must have said it last week because it was when we were talking about WrestleMania. Duh. But brain fart. But use that alternate universe to play here. Use it to, framework what will hopefully happen like when you get crowds back, because there's a lot of things that they could do with the Fiend, with using this like quote unquote alternate universe that you really wouldn't be able to do in a quote unquote match, a live match setting, where now you don't have live matches really. You can tape this stuff and do a lot of some of the same things you did with that WrestleMania segment. And that's where I think they should go with this also, is to go into that realm of these things to achieve some of what, we're talking about here. To achieve, you don't have to have a match per se to have Strowman go to being a heel.
I think the problem that I foresee is the same problem that we always run into on this podcast, is that we put too much brain into the ideas that we pitch. And
we actually think about stuff.
And it makes so much sense for Bray Wyatt to mess with Braun Strowman and to try to replicate the kind of Cena-esque thing where we're not even really calling it a match. And the belt doesn't even need to be talked about. It doesn't need to be challenged for.
The Fiend character is one of those characters that, like, you see some of these wrestlers, they get to a certain point in their career where they don't need the belt. The Fiend, his character, if he does it right, does not need a belt.
Ever.
He doesn't.
I can oddly make that same argument for Roman Reigns right now. All the way through Roman Reigns' return, from leukemia. It almost seems like he doesn't even need to be going after the championship. And as soon as he said, "I'm next to Goldberg," I hated it. Like, I don't think he needs to be in that conversation. I'd actually rather just see him feuding with people over feuds, period, not over championships.
I think he basically just needs to be that essence of his character when he first came in, only a good guy version of it. Of that, what was the Shield? The Shield, they strive for justice, right? So that's what Roman Reigns needs to be. He doesn't need a belt, like you said. He just needs to be a character where he's trying to get justice. And maybe sometimes the storylines he gets into is because he's just stepping in. Well, what?
I just like, you just like the light went on.
Chris just got an idea.
Whoa. Well, we all assume that it's Ali as the truth, right? The guy who's coming out and doing all the promos and basically ratting out Dolph and Sonya Deville. What if it's Roman Reigns?
That would be awesome.
What if it's Roman Reigns? And what if it's doing exactly that character again? Like, that's a brilliant idea. It will not happen. But a light just went on when you said that, Jimmy, because that would be really good. And that's exactly the character that I think everyone would get behind again for Roman. He'd be really good at that.
Yeah. I mean, the problem that everybody has with Roman Reigns is that management pushes him. Nobody likes any wrestler that management pushes, because it's impossible for them to hide the fact that management is pushing them. When they push them unnaturally, and it'll eventually happen with McIntyre. Like, the reason that people aren't like anti-McIntyre is because he has built a very good character around interacting with the people. True. And as long as he keeps that up, he'll keep them over. That is something that most of their high-level talent has never really been quite good at recently. The people that they put the belt, like, Paul Heyman's job is not to get the crowd to support Brock Lesnar. It's to get people to hate him. Goldberg, doesn't really do a good job of crowd interaction, or really any wrestling in general.
He just really yells at people.
Yeah. So again, it's easy to turn on those people. Reigns, the same thing. Reigns, I don't know, like, Reigns is good at crowd interaction, but people just don't like it when they know that he's getting pushed to the moon just because he's Vince's guy. Nobody likes Vince's guy ever. And it's always clear who Vince's guy is at any given point, or Vince's decisions.
The thing is with Roman, like you were talking about how he should be like the bringer of justice kind of thing. See, they want to make him this big dog, and how the ring is his yard now, kind of like the Undertaker. I think you let him go mega heel, like when the Undertaker was Big Evil or whatever. But when he was the American Badass, but he was Big Evil, and he cut his hair short and like beat the living hell out of Ric Flair at WrestleMania that year, and his son before, to get the match. He only belt I remember him having during that time frame where he was just this uber evil person was the hardcore title. And that was just so he can use weapons when he did it. But just let Roman go around for 6 to 8 months, just beating the hell out of people, being a bad guy, disrupting anything and everything. He doesn't need a belt. Just let him get that persona about him that, okay, this guy means business. And then you can try to turn him face and put him in that kind of feel. But don't do it. The only thing people remember from him in the last little bit is dog food. Like that. He doesn't deserve to be in the title picture because of all that. He doesn't need it. Just let him be him and be mean. They don't ever let Vince's guy be mean, and just let him be mean. They let him go heel for a little while. People will forget all this. He's Vince's guy for a little while, and he'll be fresh whenever he comes back.
I also think it's a learning process, right? Because if you have people that have never, the Shield, they were heels but they weren't heels that had to necessarily stand on their own solo promos. You know, they worked together to kind of build themselves there, and which is why Rollins flourished, because you know he could talk, and he was, you know, like much better at it than I think Ambrose was, or Reigns was. I think going heel is just an interesting lesson for somebody who's been a face for so long. Do it for a while, and it probably makes you learn how to be a face better by being a good heel as well. You connect the dots a lot better. That's why some of the really great wrestlers have been able to do both so well.
You know, that's an interesting point. I think Bayley is a great example of a wrestler that was a face for a while, and she was okay. I mean, she was obviously the kid favorite, but as a heel, I think she's really coming into her own as a character, and I think that's really going to help her career going forward, understanding how to be not only a face but a good heel, and then being a better face because of it. So I think you bring up a good point, and I think Bayley's representing that right now.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I like it tonight, boys. I like the conversation. I like it.
We're eager and willing to talk about wrestling. It was a good week to actually have some matches. We haven't even gotten into our friends over at AEW who've been hanging out at QT Marshall's gym, taping a whole bunch of matches. I have one call out, and I think I talked about this briefly with Captain, but Britt Baker had, I don't know, what do you think, Chuck? Was it a good 12 seconds of back and forth with Sheeta that was like, had some nice rhythm, really showed like good ring action? And then she got kicked in the face.
Busted open.
And it looked great, right? But let's be clear. She got kicked in the face because she screwed up.
Yes.
She leaned over and got kicked in the face when she was supposed to stand up tall. Now, they played it off. They made it work. But ultimately, those 10 to 12 seconds of good rhythm and the one kick to the face that got color in it were about the only high spots in that match. The rest of it, she's really bad, man. Like, she's not getting better. She doesn't have ring presence. She doesn't have that rhythm with the other wrestlers. It's just not fun to watch. And the only thing she's got going for her, which is the craziest thing to come out of my mouth in a long time, is Tony Schiavone. Like, honestly,
can
anybody speak positive?
They are setting up for Tony Schiavone to get involved in a match that Britt Baker is going to have, and I look forward to it. It's actually the part of that story that I really, really like, is that basically, I don't know, I mean, think of it as like the abusive girlfriend, like all she does is yell at him, but then he's sitting there announcing with Chris Jericho, who was absolutely great on the mic, by the way, and they're sitting there like calling all these matches, and yeah, I mean, Jericho's like, well, you know, that's your girl, and he's like, oh, no, I mean, I do get along with Britt Baker, and you know, and going on and on and on, and it's just like, well, yeah, but if you went back multiple weeks, you probably wouldn't be saying that. Like, they've started to turn it into the story, and so I think that is the high point. I agree, her wrestling, I mean, she just needs to keep working and keep working and keep working. It's like, listen, Britt Baker, you are dating probably the most talented wrestler in NXT. You just need to keep working with him and figure stuff out.
That's exactly what I was just gonna say. I mean, damn, everybody's quarantined at this point. You're home most of the time. Like, shit. Come on, Adam Cole, can you teach this woman something? Like, help her out. Like, damn. Sometimes it's so painful, but like, yeah, Chris, I agree. I think it was more, I'm gonna give her a little bit more, benefit. I think it was more than 12 seconds that she had in that match. But yeah, once she made that mistake, and I had to go back, and we were talking about it, and I had to go back after you said that she made the mistake because I missed it at first, and then I looked at it again, and I was like, oh, yep, right there. Once she made that little slight hiccup, I mean, man, it threw her off for the rest of the match, and pretty much made
what
the
did
rest
throw
of the
you off
match
though, too?
terrible.
Somebody kicked you in the face.
You know what? I'm usually the one doing the kicking in the face. So if
This is
someone
true.
wants to come and kick me in the face, let's go. Bring it. We'll see. But yeah, I don't know. It was like it was just a train wreck almost after that. Like I felt like the match should like the ref should have been like, "Hey, listen, this is looking pretty bad. Let's just end this right now. Like somebody pin somebody and let's just get out of here."
Minus the 5 seconds that she like embraced the blood. I kind of like
Yes.
that part of it.
Yes, that was good. I agreed.
But the only way that I probably disagree, where I know I would disagree with Chris, is I don't mind the character. I think the character's fine. I've grown to actually enjoy it quite a bit. So I think the character's fine. I think it just comes down to the wrestling. And the wrestling hurts the character because the wrestling's pretty bad. I mean, she's not as bad as like Lana. She's probably, I wouldn't say she's as bad as like Tamina, but she's not much better than that either. And that's not saying much.
I just want her to drop the role model thing because that's Bailey's thing. And I think AEW and Britt Baker are better than that. They can come up with something else. Just move on. You made t-shirts, I get it, but just move on to something else. Now that she's got a bloody face and stuff, maybe they can play off of that and figure out a way to make a catchphrase off of that.
She's gonna be the man again. The man now.
Oh geez. If she says anything to do with like the woman or something like that, or the something or other, like it's maybe that's the spoof. Maybe AEW's way of getting, interesting, fun characters are just completely spoofing the WWE. Look at the Exalted One, who basically is Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. It's really good. But I don't know that Britt Baker could pull off what she's trying to do. I believe that Brody Lee could pull it off.
I've been giving a big pass to Brody Lee and Lance Archer because of everything that's going on. So I should be sitting here saying you should not be fighting jobbers week to week. And I wholeheartedly agree with that statement. That being said, because everybody's kind of on a weird like holding pattern, I'm kind of been giving it a pass.
I think that's a universal pass. Yeah,
I would give it a pass.
The same
in
argument
WWE
for
too.
SmackDown, Raw. Yeah, and they're doing that. WWE had, I think, 2 jobbers on Raw, and I think it was at least 1 on SmackDown. Yeah, I think 1 on SmackDown. So the same thing.
I know
take what you can.
The only difference is I know, like on WWE, I know the jobbers. Like they're having like Deonna Purrazzo, like jobbing out to Nia Jax. I know her. I don't know the jobbers per se that are jobbing out for AEW. But again,
that's what
I'm
NXT
okay.
is, right? NXT is the building ground for guys that can go up and be jobbers to the main card. You don't have that in AEW. You just basically have guys just showing up. Granted, there was a couple of, I think, NWA, the Squared Circle, the Mean Girl was in the crowd, so I'm waiting for her to show up as a jobber here shortly because I think she must train at QT Marshall's. So we're going to get a lot of jobbers that way right now.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I kind of liked the Brody Lee match too because it felt unlike his other matches, like he's getting back into wrestling shape. I don't know if you guys felt the same way. He looked a little bit better in the ring with a couple moves that he was doing.
He's been out of the gym, it looks like. I remember seeing him when he was the Bludgeon Brothers, and he was cut, man. I mean, he was lean and mean, and he's definitely put some weight back on, which was probably a little more on purpose because he's that hardcore wrestler. So he's going to probably get into some pretty hardcore stuff here in AEW.
Yeah.
Which I expect them to do that. They seem to have that more freedom to their want to do that. And I think that's when, like, you see people like Dean Ambrose shine and that kind of thing, or John Moxley as he goes by now. Like, you see, I think that'll feed more into them. And I say if, not when, because you never know if they're going to, but when the Revival show up, like, that could add that kind of hardcore aspect to the tag division too if you let it happen more.
Oh, I can't wait
Yeah,
for the
that's big
Revival to
news.
be on AEW.
Big news.
Yes,
The Revival got let
has been
go.
released.
Yeah.
Yep, and they're
Sorry,
free to
spoilers.
perform.
Anywhere. They just got straight up released.
That's awesome. Yeah, straight up release, which is, you know what? Kudos to WWE. They've been dragging it out for a while, but basically just letting them go and them not having any non-compete, and WWE knows these guys are going to go someplace. They know they're going to have a career after WWE. You know, I appreciate that it happening. I know there was some back and forth with trademarks and copyrights and stuff, but you know, it's a business in the end. You know, you got to protect your business
I
on
feel like
both
that's got to be
sides.
Triple H. I feel like Triple H has got to be there for those decisions, has got to be in Vince's ear saying, listen, if we drag this out, if we keep adding to their contract, if we don't pay them, all these stories, all they do is make us look bad. So the only way that we can fix that is just releasing people when they want to be released and letting the talent that wants to come to WWE and be utilized by us. We're not going to lose all of the best people in the industry, because some of the best people in the industry are still going to wrestle for WWE and do wrestle for WWE. Now, do the best tag teams, at this point, do the top 3 best tag teams wrestle for WWE? I don't think so. I think all of them either do or will wrestle for AEW. And the Revival is one of those 3, I would say. Is definitely going to be adding to it.
Oh yeah, it's just a matter of time, kind of feel with them.
Yeah. So it's exciting.
I'm gonna curb my reaction to completely saying that AEW's got the better tag teams. Revival will be there. I have 100%. I would put whatever on that. They are way too friendly with the Young Bucks. That's way too obvious of a feud to get right into. So Revival over there obviously makes that tag team division so much stronger. But I'm interested to see what WWE's been doing with this younger talent and combining them into tag teams. You know, the Garza Theory thing, I wasn't quite all in on just because I wanted to see it be more of an LWO thing. But
I think
you
it
know,
will. I think it
they
will in the
meshed
long run.
really well. They meshed really well. Garza and Theory, they look good.
I think
And then now they
Umberto will
got
mesh with
Ricochet and
them.
Alexander. I mean, think about it. There's a lot of decent tag teams that they're kind of piecing together right now that are fun to watch.
I think Austin Theory needs his time in NXT, though. I think Garza Umberto Carrillo does make sense, or Garza Andrade does make sense, and I think that they would work fine off of each other.
Going back to like the Revival and WWE, you know, just letting them go. I mean, I would think that it would help WWE as well, because it kind of declutters the roster a bit, you know, for these guys that, you know, you might not be using, that might not come back after their contracts are over. But I would think that WWE would want to like fix that stuff as soon as possible and do more of kind of what they did with the Revival, if that is truly what they did, and just, you know, let them go with no non-compete and everything, or maybe that was just in their contract. You know, who knows? But I think it would make things easier, because we always say that there are so many people in WWE, and there are many people that don't even get used. So I think it would be a benefit to them as well to do that stuff up front for some of these guys.
I think there's a lot other wrestlers that they could have let go first, though, to clear out the roster.
Oh,
that
110% agree.
that's the other thing. There's a lot of guys on the roster that they are hanging on to that they should probably just move on from. And
EC3.
the Revival
Yeah.
could have been, I think, something really big in WWE. And I 100% agree. EC3 is a guy that I don't think he needs to be on a WWE roster right now. You're not
Bob
doing anything with
Lashley?
him. Bob Lashley, I don't think he needs to be on a WWE roster. There's a pretty much a good dozen guys that could probably go up and down the roster and clear out the WWE roster and probably not hurt them that much as far as competition goes. I think the Revival honestly will hurt them when it's all said and done.
I think
Yes,
Bob
agreed.
Lashley and EC3 could immediately go back to Impact and make a be good. Be good on Impact.
I think Apollo Crews is another one that I think is a great wrestler, but
Black
I don't
Cruz?
think he's gonna make make a huge impact. What do you think about Cruz and Lashley and some of the other African Americans that are kind of floundering right now on Raw, getting together and doing a second iteration of the Nation of Domination?
Did you just use the word Africans?
African Americans.
I
Oh,
think
okay.
that it would be a good way of
What else do you want
using.
What did I say? I did say it right. I said it right.
I think that would be a good way of
Don't
using
rewind.
those wrestlers, because you've got three guys now. One of these guys doesn't wrestle very much anymore, but you've got three guys that have always had issues with breaking into any other character other than what they are, and that would be Bob Lashley, Apollo Crews, and Titus O'Neil. All three of those guys. They're just their characters, and they've never really been any. There was that one time where Apollo Crews became Apollo, but nothing changed other than his name.
Yeah, it'd be interesting if you just maybe put those guys together and maybe there's another guy out there somewhere that it could be the microphone, the talker. Maybe one of these managers that NXT is building right now. Maybe that's something they could do to kind of push these guys a little bit more. And we know Jimmy loves factions, so building another faction can't hurt things.
I mean, Leo Rush is pretty good on a mic.
Ooh, I like that.
That's awesome.
I like that a lot. Leo on the mic with those three big muscle guys. That's a pretty good little faction there, and I would buy it.
As
Keep
long as he
calling
doesn't
the
come out and say
Almighties.
Lashley.
No, it'd be something. It would have to be something different if they're going.
He would come up with something different. And it's interesting you bring up Leo Rush because they're releasing the new NXT Cruiserweight tournament brackets, and Leo Rush has yet to show up in any of the brackets. So is it possible they have another angle for him coming? You never know.
Are there any interesting names on those brackets?
Most of the normal ones, and I could pull them up here. Let me pull them up real quick. But they did an A and a B bracket so far, and it's got guys like Drake Maverick in it. It's got guys like Kushida in it. But some new names are showing up. Atlas is in there. He hasn't made his debut yet, and I believe is it Phantasma is one of the wrestlers that was on the Independents that is a masked wrestler that's going to be debuting so far. So, and then the normal cruiserweights like Tony Nese and stuff. But it'll be interesting to see who pops up because what they've been doing is kind of layering in a new name every group. So we've gotten 2 so far.
So I want a very, very quick, like 1 sentence reaction to the Forgotten Sons debuting on SmackDown. What do you guys think of that?
I got a funny
joke because I want to pivot into NXT, but let's give this just a second.
I got a funny joke.
Okay.
So I saw something on social media, and it's a post that basically says Vince McMahon speaking to Triple H. Hey, Triple H, we really need a big push because it's, the SmackDown after WrestleMania. Can you get those Undisputed Era boys up here because we really want to make a big push for SmackDown? And then it's Triple H saying, yeah, sure. Here you go, boss. And it's a picture of the Forgotten Sons.
Other than that, what are your thoughts on the Forgotten Sons coming up?
Underwhelming. I think is it Braxton? Who's the middle the guy who's the Batista of the group?
Riker.
That's
Right?
Riker. Thank you. I'm pretty sure, and I could be completely wrong, but I think it's Riker. You're right. He's got the most potential of the three. The other two are journeymen at best. It's nice stories that they've made it up to the main roster, but ultimately creating that next Batista is where I see this trio kind of coming in.
I think my little quick take on it would be when I saw that they had debuted, my thought was they'll probably be more over than my gut reaction would say that they would be. Because my gut reaction is like, what? But then I'm like, you know what? They'll probably be more over. I think the crowd will like them. The crowd will definitely like them more than I do.
We'll see. I don't know. I think with no crowd there, it's I don't know. We're gonna see what happens, but I don't know that they have the push even in NXT. They've had some decent matches in some of the takeover stuff, but I don't know if they could put together a main run. I compare them to Sanity. I think it's gonna be a similar flat landing for them.
Yeah. Well, we got about 20 minutes left, and I want to talk only about NXT and only two matches in particular. I want to talk about the ladder match first, and then I want to end with Gargano versus Ciampa. So any thoughts on this women's ladder match?
It was entertaining enough.
Man, do I find myself missing the crowd.
Yes.
I think that's the biggest takeaway I had from that ladder match. A couple of really good spots. You know, got to give it to a couple of the girls for taking some really good spots. A couple of them looked really kind of forced, but ultimately a fun match. But without the crowd, it's just weird, man. I miss wrestling in front of a crowd. This was the first week that I watched a couple of matches and I was like, man, I really miss the crowd because this could have been something I think special and another takeover caliber match. If you would just get Chelsea Green the hell out of there.
You mean Britt Baker?
Oh, I'm sorry, Britt Baker. Oh no, I mean Chelsea Green. I mean, wait, it's the same person. Wait, they're not. I've never seen them both in the same place. What happened?
I thought that the match was okay. I thought that I was really torn about who was going to win it, and what was funny was I had said, well, you know, Io's certainly going to win it, and then I was like, well, wait a second though, I don't like the imagery of that with her being a heel, and Charlotte's probably going to come in as a heel, so maybe it's going to be Candice LeRae. And my thought process to that was, well, you know, because Candice LeRae is a face, which would change before the end of the episode. And then you, Chris, when you were watching with me, Chaz and Sarah, said an interesting thing, which is like, well, I mean, it won't take that much to flip Io Shirai face. And I 100% agree now after watching that whole episode.
Snap the fingers.
Because clearly, you know, Candice LeRae is not set to be a face anymore. Or I don't think the crowd would accept her as a face anymore.
No, not after kicking Johnny in the ding ding and then kicking Ciampa in the ding ding. So
why is one a ding and one's a ding ding?
I said ding ding.
Yeah.
I might have cut out. They're both ding dings.
Well, maybe the more important match is actually that Ciampa Gargano match, which is why I kind of wanted to talk about it last. And if I could use one word to describe this match, the word would be messy. What would your word be, Chris?
Do I only get one word?
Yeah, try one word first.
Okay. How about cut?
That's a good one. I think that ties in with my messy. I think we're on the same page here. What about you, Steven, or you, Chuck? Do you guys have a good word for this match?
I do. Since Steven's still thinking, my word was boring.
I'm kind of with you there as well. What about you, Steven? You got one for me?
Just sloppy or careless. Just.
And okay, so every single one of these words. Now, I guess I can't totally speak for everybody here, but I'm assuming that everybody's words deal with a word that's going to make us all take a drink in 2 seconds, and that is production. Drink.
Yeah.
The production.
Some of the wrestling.
The wrestling was. I mean, the wrestling was. I thought the wrestling was fine.
It was fine, but with the way the two of them have had matches before, it was not what it should have been.
I agree, and I think that it was like I was watching Orton Edge. Right? I mean, it was there were many very similar spots, the climbing on the truck and fighting on the truck and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But good gracious almighty, if somebody nailed it with their word, it was Chris. Cut. Cut.
Mm-hmm.
Cut. That was the camera. Cut. I was literally getting motion sick from watching this match. Like, literally at one point I was getting dizzy watching this match because they were making so many cuts. And within the first, 30 seconds, we had both said something about it when we were watching it. Like, oh my God, they keep cutting. Like, why do you keep cutting? And it never stopped. I mean, it was just nonstop cutting from camera to camera to camera. It was awful from that perspective.
Mm-hmm. There is a virus spreading in WWE, and it is this camera cutting that has been going on now for the better part of probably 4 months. I noticed it first, and I'm probably late to the game. I noticed it first at the Royal Rumble, and I was at the Royal Rumble. And the only reason I noticed it was because I went back and watched the Royal Rumble and realized that you didn't even get to see the best spear in that entire match, which was the one that Dolph Ziggler took from Edge, because of all the damn camera cuts that were going on. Mm-hmm. When they get into these production meetings and whoever's directing, because that's what it is essentially, right? It's the director who keeps calling for cut to camera 5, cut to camera 6, cut to camera 2, cut to camera 1, cut to camera 7. Holy cow, this guy must not have a voice 30 minutes into whatever show they're doing, because he must be talking non-stop. They are doing it way too much, and it's taking away from the product. They need to fix something. I've been all over AEW since the beginning about doing production the right way. I will get all over WWE because holy cow, they took one of the best feuds we've seen in the last 5 to 10 years and ruined it by cutting from every camera angle you can think of in an empty arena. All they had to do was have one camera inside and one camera outside. Instead, they had 12, and they cut, and you never saw the other cameraman. How'd that even work?
Yeah, I mean, that's why they probably cut so much. They were probably like, we don't want to see a cameraman. And the thing is, this is, and this was the part that afterwards, so this is like, we watched the match, and I think I react like, yeah, that match was okay. And then I went to bed that night, and you know what? I started to loathe the match. And I think you might be on the same page with me on this, Chris. This is why I loathe the match. I loathe the match because then you had Candice LeRae go heel, kick Ciampa squarely in the gonads to ensure that Ciampa remains pretty much a face, which is the saddest thing in the world, because at one point Gargano was stupid enough to talk about Ciampa's daughter, and he flipped out so much that I think like you, Chris, I got back into it. I was like, oh my God, Ciampa's so amazing. Like he flipped his lid and it was like, that's the Ciampa that we want. We want that Ciampa as a heel. That is the best thing that WWE has ever created from a heel perspective ever. In the history of WWE, I think that is the best heel ever. And they showed it to you, and then Candice LeRae comes and kicks him in the nuts at the end of the match to just show, like, hey,
we don't care about you.
He's a face. Forget about it. He's a face at this point. It's very sad.
I think, and to that point, and I 100% agree, because I was geeking out when I saw Ciampa beating the hell out of him after he said Willow's name. I don't like the fact that they even put Candice in it.
It doesn't make sense.
Like,
it seems like you're breaking the rules of the match.
But the thing is, like, you knew she was going to be involved the minute she pulled up and was on camera.
Yes.
And instead of it just being the two of them, and it always could have just been the two of them, and that was how, and the great promo that I was talking about on this podcast, saying that Triple H and Gargano and Ciampa did a great job cutting a promo in the ring, just the three of them, and I loved it. They took it all away. They took it all away by having to layer in her. And I love her. I think Candice LeRae is awesome, but she was not needed in this storyline.
I agree.
It's frustrating.
And so then what you get,
such a good story otherwise.
Yeah, you get a very underwhelming match because of these extra things. And I totally expect that the group of people that we were watching that, because it was more than just me and Chaz and Sarah and Chris. There was a handful of us watching this match all together. I guarantee you that they enjoy that match, I think. And I'm not taking that away from them. I think that had I not seen everything else that these guys had put together, I probably would have enjoyed this match. But that being said, I get to the end of it, and the only exciting thing to come out of that match is that Killer Cross and Scarlett Boudreaux were sitting in a car. Bordeaux. Did I say that wrong? Bordeaux.
Did you guys catch that, Steven? Chuck,
Yeah.
Did you guys catch them in the car at the end?
It's kind of hard not to when it's everywhere.
Yeah, I did see that.
Well, it's always interesting. Like, who has a car like that? Who has a car that's lit like perfectly? Was it a limo or a town car or something? It's just perfectly lit in the back seat with just the two of them hanging out back there. Glad they're putting them together. It makes sense. I actually disagree with you, Jimmy, because the end of that match, what made it great, the best part of that match was at the end, all I could think about was a pastrami sandwich. All I wanted.
Yes, when Candice LeRae handed the thing in it ended up being a cup. It was in a brown paper bag. And of course, everybody that was in the channel made their prediction on what it was. And I believe it was Sarah. Was it Sarah that said that it was a pastrami sandwich?
Yes. And now I have still craved a pastrami sandwich since that moment on Thursday night. So, but how much better would that feud have been if Gargano just comes out and clocks Ciampa in the head with a pastrami sandwich and pins him for the 3?
I mean, I would have died.
That's, I think, what made it entertaining was the fact that, and I think we found this through the weird time in wrestling right now. It's been enjoyable to be able to kind of watch BS and talk about wrestling together, even if it's on Zooms or Discords or whatever we're using. I think that's going to keep wrestling interesting right now, and I appreciate them putting wrestling out there right now. But I think they need to kind of not try as hard as they're trying. Does that sound weird? Like, I think they're actually trying too hard. I think they just need to just give us wrestling that's entertaining, and when it gets back to normal, then you could try to really think outside the box with things other than the cinematic stuff, which I think is great. Just show us good wrestling. Show us a couple of good wrestling matches. I think I said this last week. Show me some great cruiserweights that we don't get to see all the time on the main show. You know, they're down there in Orlando all the time. Put them on the card. Let them wrestle. Let them have fun.
Yeah, for me, I normally watch AEW after it started, usually like an hour and a half into it, and I usually watch NXT on Thursday. And I was watching it while I was working, and the women's ladder match like actually kept my attention. I liked the match. It wasn't like fabulous, but it was a good match, and it kept my attention throughout the whole thing, where I was watching more than I was doing my work. When it came to the whole Gargano Ciampa thing, um I started to watch, and I kind of like took a break. I think I had some lunch, and I'm watching, and I just like fell out of interest at multiple points in time. Like I thought it went on too long, and it was just like it just got boring for me. And then when I would think that something really interesting would happen, like in my mind what I thought would happen didn't happen, and it didn't make me more interested in the match, and I was just kind of like, eh. And like to the point where I watched them both get kicked in the ding ding, as Tiro calls it, as Chris calls it, and I was like, okay, great. Oh, okay, good. It's over. Thanks. Back to work.
You know, and I think I don't even remember when I've said this. I feel like a broken record, but I think WWE made a mistake in airing everything in the same week, because the cinematic matches for WrestleMania, the Boneyard, the Fireflies Funhouse, the Last Man Standing match, and this Gargano and Ciampa match all being the same week, it just you crammed basically 4 very similar matches, 2 much more similar than the other 2 being the Gargano, Ciampa, and the Edge and Orton match. But it's like everything felt like a repeat. Like I've already seen this. And I'll even go back a week before when Gargano and Ciampa were fighting and beating each other up all around the Performance Center. So really, it was like 2 weeks of the same damn match over and over, and the same moves and the same spots, and it's not new. It's not interesting. And if you would spread it out a little bit, we'd forget about stuff. You know, if you showed this Gargano Ciampa match a month from now, I'd probably be more into it. If you showed the Boneyard or the Firefly Funhouse match 2 weeks from now, I probably would have thought they were even better than they were, and they were good. You know, I think they just crammed things in together a little bit too much because they were so worried about putting on this grand show over the weekend for WrestleMania.
Shame. It's a really shame. So we're at that ending portion of our show where everybody gets their hot take if they want it. Who's got a hot take for me?
All right. I'll give the boys some time to speak think I should say while I speak. So we talked a little bit about who this person who exposed Dolph and Sonya Deville was. And all signs point to it being Ali, right? It's the circle. It's the same amount of dots, the light of the circle of his that he holds up in his hand. So Ali's a cop. You know, him showing the truth makes all the sense in the world, right? He can go right into that character. We mentioned Roman Reigns as an amazing idea just because it came up in conversation. I think that'd be good. I don't think they'll go that direction, but it'd be good. I want to drop one more idea that I thought of earlier today, preparing myself for the podcast. What if it is the person that's in the middle of this from the very beginning? What if it's another swerve like WWE loves to do, where the person who is actually being harmed by the video is the person that's behind the video? What if it's Sonya Deville? What if it's Sonya Deville that's basically playing games with everybody? Everybody's her pawn in this game. And now that's why she's with Dolph. That's why she's playing Mandy Rose. That's why she's playing with Heavy Machinery. She's messing with everybody to get her way. And ultimately, it's Sonya Deville who's wanted to get her way this whole time because Mandy has always, remember, go back to the ladder match, Money in the Bank. Who was in the match other than Mandy Rose instead of Sonya Deville? Mandy Rose. You know, Sonya always has been overshadowed by Mandy, but now the truth could come out. Now the truth can come out that Sonya is really the strong one. She's really the smart one. She's really the one that's going to move on and be the big name in WWE.
I like it. I like the story.
Yeah, so do I.
Too clever, man. Too clever for its own good, though.
Will never happen. It's just Ali.
Any hot takes for you other boys?
Just something unpredictable. Like you're saying, like we know it's going to be Ali. Just throw some kind of curve at us. I'm just... they're losing all their freshness to me. Like they have all this talent and everything they can do, but it's getting very, very predictable, certain angles, and it's old.
Mine would be with someone who's not currently wrestling, and it would be, what's the true story going on with Ronda Rousey and her interviews as of late? Is it just a work, or is she really feeling that way and she's not coming back and she's basically shitting on professional wrestling? And I don't know where I stand on it, but it intrigues me, and I just don't know how to feel about it. That's what I was thinking about towards like the middle to the end of the week.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, obviously, I hope that it's a work, because if it's not a work, then it's just disappointing.
I have my opinion on it. I just, knowing her history of being such a huge wrestling fan, I have to imagine it's a work. And I think it's a great one. And I enjoy her playing into the character a little bit. The character that we always wanted her to be, that badass character, and not the good guy.
So my hot take is not a hot take. It is a lecture that has absolutely nothing to do with wrestling, and will be enjoyable for my other friend Steven if he listens to the podcast. We were going through movies that Steven had seen and had not seen that I had owned, and he had the audacity to tell me that he has never seen The Goonies. Well,
shut up.
Having been somebody that is around my age and having not seen The Goonies is the biggest travesty of all travesties that could possibly happen.
Shame.
This is not acceptable. And within this week, we are going to watch The Goonies, Steven. If you listen to this podcast, we are going to be watching that movie along with the live action version of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles from the 90s, which you also haven't seen. And
which one? There's like three of them.
Like the very first one. The original live action one.
Yeah.
From the 90s.
I think the original was 89.
Well, 89. Well, there you go. But close. Either way, he's not seen that one either. Also unacceptable. So
well, hold on. I can kind of like give a pass to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles thing.
No.
But I cannot give a pass to Goonies. I mean, that is like one of the most iconic 80s movies like
ever. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm hurt. I'm hurt inside knowing that someone wouldn't have seen this movie.
Well,
I don't understand.
There you go. And now lecture over. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening to the podcast. As usual, it's been wonderful. It has been episode 54. What's in the bag? It's a pastrami sandwich. We enjoyed talking. I thought we had some great conversations today. Hopefully, we have a interesting week of wrestling. I'm going to say interesting because, it's been kind of a mixed bag. I just hope it's worth talking about, obviously. And looking forward to that next episode of Dark Side of Wrestling. Always, always, always. So, keep on keeping on, everybody. And we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.
Go watch Goonies.
Go watch the Goonies.